Hey everyone, welcome to the story of Stephen Tyson. I can't wait for you to meet this incredible guy. He's my friend. He has cystic fibrosis. He was diagnosed at a very young age and is the recipient of a bilateral lung transplant. When we asked Stephen what was most important to him, his answer was, people need to know everything before making a decision. Speaking as a person that's been post-transplant for over 10 years, he knows it's worth it. He just wants you to know everything before you make that decision. Pay attention. It's coming at you.
So I was born in 1983. The first instances of CF that were apparent was my mother complained to the doctors that whenever she was kissing me, I tasted like salt. And at this point, I hadn't been diagnosed yet. I was just in the failure to thrive scenario where I was a tiny baby. I was super quiet, but I was just coughing a lot and digestive issues. So it wasn't until she said, he tasted like salt and I have to keep replacing my chapstick, that a doctor was like, holy shit, this could be cystic fibrosis. So it was at the 2-month mark, and then we did the sweat test and all that, and it was confirmed cystic fibrosis. I can't say much about how my parents felt other than, I guess, shock, because back then there was no, am I a carrier? Is this what to expect? And my first memories of cystic fibrosis was around the 6 to 7 year mark of being constantly hospitalized as a child at this point in Alabama. And even then, just the amount of work it took, not just from myself and the amount of pain as far as placing IVs. I still have this vivid memory of a night in Birmingham, Alabama, of them trying to put an IV in me, and it got so bad they had to wheel me off and put it in my foot. And my parents were still living in Montgomery, Alabama, because my parents were military. So taking the train back and forth, I have a younger brother without CF. I was 6 years old, and it was just, this was like already the reality, like IVs in the foot, parents spending the night at the hospital, hundreds of miles away. And, you know, growing up at that time, the life expectancy being told 18, I certainly didn't feel at that time that I would make it to 18. And just the sheer amount of appointments, medicines, therapies, the daily grind of the treatments we had to do, just to give us a few months break before the next hospital stay, where everything went back to zero. Like you spend 3 months being the perfect patient, and then you go out for a treat one night at whatever restaurant or whatever family event, like the holidays are, to be honest, the holidays for me are a catch-22. It's a time to be around family and friends, to enjoy a lot of food, to gain weight, but it's also an incredibly dangerous and risky time. I started to use the holidays as a time to be hospitalized. Like I would schedule my time in the hospital over the holidays because it was like a cocoon for me. It was safe. I wouldn't get sick. I would get better. So by the time the holidays were over, I would be like this Energizer bunny. So even now, the holidays for me, I recognize the importance for family and friends, but for me, it's not. It's like Thanksgiving celebration, Christmas, and now without my wife, it's a time to just put up the fence, stay healthy, make it for another year.
Imagine that.
Yeah,
Using your holidays to recover.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was exactly that. New Year's, I spent multiple Christmases and New Year's in the hospital. I had a favorite, even it got so much, I had a favorite room that I could see the fireworks from. And I felt okay because you just don't know who's sick, who's trustworthy at these big events that's going to potentially alter your life in a negative way forever, whether it's the flu, a cold, as simple as a cold. And it's like, is that worth a couple pieces of turkey and some mashed potatoes and a gift card? Like to spend a month in the hospital, be miserable, lose weight, everything I've worked for. It was just tough. It was tough. As a child with CF, it was really bad. And as I said a few weeks ago at one of the CF events, I wasn't even a great patient, really. I had so much meds, so much therapies, so much appointments, so many doctor's notes, so many just check-ins that it was like, I just need a break. Like, can I have like a week break. And you can't even do that when you're that before Trikafta. Like, you can't even take a week break, or it's like this is setting you back even more and your baseline's even lower now. So a lot of times I put myself in bad positions and paid the price for it. But there was always friends, family, and support that were always there for me, whether it was my doctors, nurses, family that were like, we have new therapies, that were showing up every day. And I was like, if they're fighting for me, if they're putting this much effort, then I have to at least reciprocate and say, I'm going to not miss a treatment. I'm going to wake up early and do this vest and flutter and whatever, this IV therapy for weeks and weeks and weeks. At school, try to hide it. As I got older, probably elementary school, middle school, the cough was, prevalent and disgusting, and did my best to stifle it and didn't want to cough in class. So the first sort of instances I remember was telling them, helps me breathe. Like, if I'm coughing, and I had different coughs too. Like, I feel like we have different coughs. Like, I have a cough where I'm actually, oh shit, this is a hospital cough. Like, I may need to be hospitalized. There's a cough because I've been maybe walking too fast, or maybe you made me laugh. Like, that's a good cough. But I had to explain to them that they're not at risk. And it may sound a little bit gnarly. However bad you feel about me coughing, I feel 100 times worse. So whatever feelings you have, I don't want to hear about them. I don't want to, like, if I'm coughing in front of you also, like, if I'm coughing in front of you, I feel and trust that you're someone I can cough around. So that for me was like a sign of a strong friendship, was if I feel comfortable having a normal CF cough for a few seconds, sometimes where I'm like crying, then that means you're a close friend to me. And it's even better if you're like, you see I'm coughing and you're like, holy, just hit him, just like smack him in the back to get it out. The acquaintances were tricky. And to be honest, up until my transplant, it was still a game of like hide and seek. Especially as I got older, it was not something I wish to broach with them, because I had such a core, close group of friends. And I did everything in my power as I got closer to transplant with my cough to avoid any scenario where I would get caught out having a coughing fit. So that means before events, before speeches, before class presentations, I would go to the bathroom and just sort of like try to get it all out. I would stifle it the best I could. I would try to mask it through laughing, but I felt comfortable enough with my close friends where in high school and in middle school, it wasn't such a big issue for me. But acquaintances, it was at the forefront. There were some days I wouldn't go out at all because I was worried about, I was coughing so bad and I didn't want questions. And it's not enough to say you have CF, because it's like a leading question. Like, well, what's CF? Well, what's the cough for? Well, you're not going to get me sick? Are you okay? It's like, I just don't want to answer these questions. I'd rather cough in peace, or I'd rather cough around my friends. Middle school was a little bit more difficult because I was still figuring out who's a good friend, who's not a good friend. By high school, I felt completely at ease with the teachers all knew, the staff knew. If I had to run out of the classroom, it was okay. If I was late to class, it was okay. Thankfully, we were in a good system, so a lot of that stuff was worked out. But the cough was just, it was especially around acquaintances, and even, growing up dating with new potential girlfriends or partners, that was awkward. Even in more, intimate settings, like that is awkward. And it's like explaining, like, this is what happens. Physical activity results in this. It became a matter of who you can trust and who you're comfortable with. So that for me was always the baseline. It's like, if I'm coughing around you and if you're completely silent, that to me is a good thing. Like, you're like, whatever, this guy just needs to get it out. And if you're someone who's just yapping away, like, oh my God, are you all right? I'm like, you shut the hell up. Like, just, I know what I'm doing. Same with medicines. Like, did you take it at 9 o'clock? Did you do it at 10? Like, just please. It took a few years of navigating, but I got to a point where a good, close group of friends, that didn't become an issue anymore. It was just, as I got older and closer to transplant, and you switch settings from your close high school friends to your more acquaintances at college to even your more professional, it's like, how am I going to manage this during the day? Like, how much am I going to have to load up on hypertonic in the morning to get it all out? But it was difficult.
Do you have a friend? Did you have a friend as a kid with CF. Like, one of the things that I found, I don't have anybody.
Yeah.
Like, I've never found anyone with CF. They don't really talk about it unless you're hospitalized.
I feel fortunate in that respect because I was in part of the military network. And I don't know if it was different rules or what, but I was born in 83. And up until 1994, I was still going to CF camp, which is completely incomprehensible to us now. But I was lucky enough to go to CF camp in a cabin like, this size, just imagine bunk bed, with 10 other CF patients for weeks on end with our own care team in another cabin. In the hospital, we were always together. We would always hang around the nurse's station, go to lunch together, go to dinner together. And it was the same group of friends that we grew up together. So I was fortunate that I grew up and had a good cohort of friends that were either in the hospital or outside of the hospital, but we could always talk about nurses and doctors, which treatments are working, which room sucks, which technician to avoid, what today's meal is, what's going around in the air outside that might make us sick. That came to an end, I would say, late 90s. The CF Foundation became much more stringent with the 6-foot rule. And it was sort of like, it was just like a line of demarcation. It was like, boom, no more congregating, no more hanging out. If you want to talk in the hallways, you can, but now you're going to have to wear the contact precaution stuff. And that sort of definitely, not obliterated, but it definitely provided an extra wall. So everybody became more and more and more careful and cautious because of this is what the CF Foundation is saying. Are we this sick because we've been hanging around each other all the time? Like, so now we need to take a step back. And I didn't see most of the friends that I saw pre-transplant where we congregated. I didn't see again until after transplant when we could finally sort of meet up again. It was helpful to see them in that state, but again, all of my friends have passed away. All of my close friends that I was sick with, that I was hospitalized with, that were transplanted in the same era, about 2011, have all passed away. It was about 4 or 5. So there was 3 women and 1 male. You sit here today, 14 years post-transplant. I don't know what I've done different, if anything. I certainly considered them more mentors than opposite because I was sort of the youngest, and I felt like they had been through so much more than me too. Like I felt like they were much sicker than I was, and so that could have had an impact. And one who passed away was so influential. She was instrumental in getting me to do, because she realized how bad center we were at was because of what she experienced. And she came into my room as I was an inpatient post-transplant and said, I don't care what you do, but you got to get out of here or you will not live. And that's what compelled us, my wife and I, to research different centers. But she was a friend before the 6-foot rule that we would always hang out with and go to lunch. She was someone that had the transplant before me at the same center. So she went through the fire. She came out and was like, you need to get the heck out. And then she passed away a year after that. And it's just, I don't know if CF patients now get to experience that at all. Like someone that's in the hospital with them saying, this is not a good deal for you. You need to open up your eyes. And I think we all know as CF patients that not every doctor and nurse is infallible. Nobody's perfect, but it doesn't mean stay in your silo and expect this. Like this is the best of the best. Like probably not, especially for the younger CF patients. That's been such a huge, I feel, loss, is that interpersonal communication. What is helping? What is not helping? Who is helping? Which center is good for you? As an older CF patient, I still have some older CF friends. We're a little bit more lax with the rules. So I do meet with them offsite and we do discuss that stuff. But if I come across, and when I'm at the hospital, I could see CF patients. I know who they are. We know who they are. I can't talk to them though. It's always the family members that come up to me and we sort of have to go off into the distance and it becomes this weird telephone game. Like I need to speak to them directly. Like what is motivating them? What is compelling them or makes them want to leave the hospital to get stronger? Like, can they see a light at the end of this 3-week or 4-week hospital stay? And we can't do that. we can't. And the only way that happens now is if there's just some weird connection where I know this CF patient from another era, or maybe we ran into each other at an event and we're both like, okay, I'm cool with this. I'm cool, you're cool, we're cool. But at the hospital, it's not possible. Especially with the younger patients, anybody under 30, I think they don't, zero communication with an older CF patient who's successful, who's doing relatively well. I'm at 100% FEV1s. I'm up to 5,000 miles on my bike this year. I still work full time. I've been to I've taken 67 flights in the last year. But none of that is filtered to other CF patients, that this is possible, or how difficult it is. Like, it's not, like we talked about, it's not rainbows, it's not get your lungs and adios, no more CF.
How old were you when you realized, oh my God, I have to go to college, or I have to get, like, I need a job.
That's funny.
Because I'm off of health insurance and soon, you know?
That's such a huge part of my story was college. So I grew up wanting law school, 4-year school, just jumped straight into law school. And I graduated. So I had an issue in high school where I had to take a year off of high school because I was so sick. I was diagnosed with non-tuberculosis mycobacterium. And I was down to like 80 pounds in sophomore year. And I had to take the year off of school just to recuperate. And was on daily IV meds for 2 years. So it delayed me a year. I had to spend an extra year in high school. And my FEV1s at that point were about 30%. So I was hovering near the transplant threshold.
Can you explain that really quick?
The threshold?
Yeah, and
The FEV, yeah.
The FEV1, the forced volume in 1 second. Like, how fast can you blow out? How much air are you moving in 1 second? Like, you take a deep breath and you just push it out. And for transplant and for CF, that's like what they're focused on. I would say a normal adult between 80 and 100%. You are not referred to transplant until you start hitting the 30% FEV1 consistently. They start talking to you about it. They start when you start thinking about transplant, anything below 30, they're like, let's get you to transplant. At least see them, get you in the system, and then we'll start the process of do you need a transplant? But that's one of the main criteria. It's also 30% the criteria for Social Security disability. So Social Security disability will be looking at your medical records, and if you're on disability and you're below 30%, you could stay on disability. But if you have a transplant and you get above 30, you could have all these other issues. Your kidneys could be in failure. You could have all these other transplant related issues. But if you're over 30%, it's automatic off. So it's just weird. I mean, it's into a whole other story. But so I was hovering and I was like, do I want to go to college? Do I want to spend 4 years at college, not knowing if I'm going to be alive at the end of the 4 years? So I started college when I was 19. I spent a year there, and I, again, was really sick. And I was like, this was 2003. Did a year, wasn't feeling it. I was like, I'm not in it right. I'm not in the right headspace. I don't think I can complete this. And I don't know what I'm going to do. So I took a few months, and then I started working in politics. I was living in Texas. So I was doing state house, working for state representatives. I worked for the mayor of San Antonio. I worked for local city councilmen, and then I worked in federal politics as a state director for Obama, and that was 2008. So I was at a comfortable, my health was stabilizing because of the treatment of the MAC treatment was stabilizing me. And I was like, well, I'm hanging around people that are college educated, and I'm doing the same stuff, and I'm feeling better. I should be in college. I could do this. I'm seeing people my age or a little bit, and they've done it. I'm just as smart as them. I'm a few years behind, but whatever. It wasn't really until my grandma, though, said, it was something I always say, is my grandma sat me down one day, and at this point, 2008, I was well past the 30% threshold. I was well past referral to transplant. I had seen the transplant center. I had said, no, I'm not ready. Physically, my body was ready. I wasn't mentally ready. And they're like, that's cool. If you're not mentally ready, we don't want you anyway. Because if you get the call and you say no, then you're not getting the call again. But it wasn't until my grandma said, have you ever thought that the transplant might be successful and go well? What are you going to do then? I was like, I haven't really thought about it. Like I have no idea, actually. It didn't even occur to me, but it made me think. And then a few months later, I reapplied to the school. I went to a great school in Texas, Trinity University. It's a small private university. And because my high school career was so weird in the sense that I didn't take any standardized tests because I was so sick. I did well on all the end of year testing. I had some bad stints because I was math, lazy, whatever. Like, what's the point? I'll be dead in a few years. So Trinity made me come in. It was like, why don't you have any SATs or ACTs? What makes you think you can come to this where the average student is a 4.0 student? We only accept so many kids a year. It's there's only 2,000 kids that go there. I was like, I'll just give you my story and I think we'll see what happens. After the interview, they accepted me and they gave me a full ride. It's a $60,000 a year school. Full ride. So I finished in 3 years. I started it before my transplant. My sophomore year, I agreed to go on the transplant list. I was called within 3 months. I had my transplant in my sophomore year. I took that year off, but Trinity was amazing. I had the same advisor throughout the 4 years. They're like, do what you got to do. We'll see you back. And I came back after my transplant and it was just like boom, 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 18 to 21 hours a semester, but being able to breathe, it's just hard to explain the mental tax that CF, especially with the transplant, has on you, where you can't focus, you can't study, you can't think. People are like, oh, let's just pull an all-nighter, let's do this, let's wake up. It's physically impossible and it's going to make me sick. But once that year of recovery and improvement, I was like, this is doable. So I graduated, and it was at this point I met my then late wife at the transplant center. But she was also a force in being like, okay, what are we going to do? I had a transplant too. She was working in the oil industry. So at this point, she was making more money than I was because she was gainfully employed as a big time oil person. But she's like, you're still in school. She's like, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I can't do politics because there's no money. And I could do it, but I don't. I want to support you. So I didn't want to do law school because it was another 3 years, and the transplant process of the lectures and the learning, it's so ingrained to you, the survival rates. I feel just the weight it places on your decisions. For me, even today, the first year survival rate for a transplant is 90%. At 5 years, only 50% live. At 10 years, it's about 30%. Nobody that I know that I was transplanted with in 2011 is alive. So I still remember meeting my late wife. We were a year into dating, and we're both talking about grad school. She was going to go to Texas A&M. I was going to go to healthcare administration. And we're looking at the transplant statistics. At this point, we're both working. I had eventually gone to work with my family company. And we're like, what? Do we want to spend 3 or 4 years and spend this much money at grad school, law school, when only 50% make it to 5 years? Why did you have the transplant? What did you get the transplant for? Was it to toil away in grad school? Was it to get stuck in a corporate cubicle and be exposed to pathogens, to viruses, and to not live? Or did we get the transplant to live, to explore? We know how it ends. We do know how it ends. And it will end. And so we both decided, we were like, okay, we're not going to grad school. We're going to live. So she stayed at the oil company. I stayed with the family company. And it was great for us. They were great for her. She was able to work in a private office because of her condition. I was able to work from home. And we just traveled the world. We went wherever we wanted, when we wanted. And it was about living. But the amount of work and how sort of clueless we were and how hard a transplant is and how each appointment and each center is different. Each doctor is different. And it gets back to the CF patient telling me, you have to leave or you will not make it. And that's why we left after 2 years. And I think that's something we're going to talk about. It's still difficult.
How long did your wife have her transplant before she passed away?
She had hers she was transplanted in May of 2011 and she passed away in September of 2021. So 10 years. Man. So I haven't told this, I told this to her before she passed, but we got into a huge argument when we first started dating because she wanted to be official. She wanted to be official, to be married. And we couldn't get married because that's another thing, is we both had great insurances and marriage would destroy it. We had such a great thing with the transplant and our insurances that we could love each other as much as we wanted to. We can care about each other. We can live in the same house. But if you tie it up in a marriage, we both lose our insurances, and then these $1,000 drugs, we're going to be stuck with bills. So that was something we agreed to early on. But one of the big fights we got into was in wanting to become official. It was a recognition that we would see each other at the end. Like we would have to live through what happened when she passed or if I passed. Like we knew it was going to happen. So it was getting into a relationship when like we knew we weren't going to be apart because of the circumstances we met, because of how much we liked each other. And I was like, it was hard for me to be like, okay, let's do it. Because I knew that the only time we wouldn't be together is if one of us passed. It was tough. It was nice in the sense of we had the same doctors, we had the same meds, but it was also scary in the sense that each appointment could be bad news. And the first 2 to 3 years when we didn't know, I still say this to Dr. Reynolds at Duke at 14 years. Like if you told me in 2011 that I would be here in 2020, almost 2025, I would say you're crazy. We did not think it would get to 5 years. None of our friends did. So we lived as if, with this weird like bell curve. In the beginning, we were super safe, and then we got a bit more risky. And then at the end, it became much more safe because we're like, oh, we have this, it's like this great investment. Now we have to protect it. So we have to go back to, we blew it, we earned it, we're gonna spend it. And now we're back, we earned it again, and we're gonna savor it and protect it. And that's where I'm at now. I'm back in that protect phase of like being super cautious during the winters and the falls and appreciating how difficult it is, like how important the meds are, how important it is to still mask on airplanes and trains and metros, and don't go to a crowded bar in January in Durham. And then don't be surprised when you wake up the next day feeling like you got hit by a train. Like that's what happens.
What does being below 30% feel like to someone watching that doesn't have CF?
Yeah. So being 30%, below 30% consistently, and I was down to 17%. It just felt like being underwater 24/7. Mornings in particular were excruciating because you're waking up just to a body filled with mucus. Like your head comes up from sleeping and you can just feel it rushing down into your lungs. Your lungs are already full. So you wake up already knowing that today is going to be, a hellacious day, a difficult, demanding, hellacious, sleepy, miserable day of coughing. The mucus is nonstop at 17%. I would just try to find breaks. I think most CF patients still do. I still like to sit in the sun, even though now it's not advised post-transplant. But that was like my only reprieve from the mucus, was just finding a spot in the sun, and just it seemed to help a little bit. Like that was my one break, was to just find a spot in the sun. But the mucus was, I was doing all sorts of tricks, hypertonic saline, super hot baths, just anything so I could take a deep breath without gurgling and coughing. As far as physical activity, it was practically impossible. And if it was possible, the benefits were not commensurate with what I was putting in. So it was, and I'm a cyclist now, and I used to cycle pre-transplant, but when I was at sophomore and I lived close to the college, I had a bike, and it was about 0.3 miles to ride my bike from my house to the school. That was the toughest bike ride I still have ever done. And I've done 5,000 miles this year. Over 170,000 feet I've climbed. 3 different bikes. I got a bike in there, a bike over here. And I could still vividly recall how bad I would show up to class. And they were like, what the hell is this guy doing? Like the Tour de France out there before he comes to school? That's like, no, I'm like literally right down the road. And it was just, God, it's like, I can't describe it. Like I do exercises now where I'm like purposely pushing myself, and I still can't reach a limit where I felt that bad and that exhausted than I did those few months before transplant. Another instance was I did travel a lot before my transplant, and this was sort of also the predicate for my transplant was traveling. I have family that lives in France, so I go to Paris a lot. I was in 2010. I was supposed to be on the transplant list, but I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready yet. I want to go to Paris. I want to go to Barcelona. I went to Paris for a month, got incredibly sick, went south. I was like, I'm fine. I can still go south. I went to Barcelona. I was so sick that my friends took me to the hospital, and I was hospitalized for 3 weeks. Thankfully, it was a CF center, so they knew what to do. It was a great treatment, but I didn't know. I mean, I knew I was sick, but I didn't know how bad. I was down to 75% SpO2, just walking around. And so when I decided to get the transplant and it went well, in 2012, I went back to the same cities and the same streets and went with my grandma. I was like, I just want to feel the difference as a healthy person. And it really clarified. Until you experience that, we get so, like, I was afraid of a transplant, even at 17%, because I had gotten used to 17%. So it was a risk, but I knew how to take care of that risk. Transplant is a complete uncertainty. Like, it's like you don't know what's going to happen. You might get up to 100, and then the next day you're in rejection, and there's nothing they can do. At 17%, some days you feel like crap. The next day you wake up, you're like, oh my God, I feel, at 21%, I feel great. I can forestall this. It doesn't even, like, you're thinking like, oh, I can get the flu or pneumonia, and that would be it. But it's like, I've done it, it's okay. So below 30% was just a daily punch in the gut of just, it's going to take hours of treatments, and who's going to be, which event, which person, which family member, which event at school is going to get me sicker, and who am I going to avoid, and who's trustworthy. It was also about getting, I had to do the will and estate planning and like doing all that stuff as a college student and power of attorneys. And for me, I just didn't expect, I expected the transplant. I finally agreed to it. It took 3 years talking and cajoling. And I think it was because that cohort of friends I talked about before, none of them had done the transplant yet either. We were all in this like holding pattern, like who's going to be the first one to jump? And I was like, after being in Europe and having fun, and yes, I got sick, I was like, I'll do it. I want to go back. I want to live. So I did it. But it wasn't like the happy-go-lucky, like, here's your lungs, have fun. Like, it wasn't that at all. I think the lack of information that was missing for the first few days after transplant, for the first few weeks, because the transplant itself is talked about as this new life, deep breaths, walking down the steps, doing all the things you wanted to do. At the center, in particular, I was at, there was no information about how you would feel immediately post-transplant and how your test would look and how you would just feel physically. Not even from the transplant, but also from the extraneous, from the chest tubes and the other wires. I forget some of the names. But
what were they telling you, I guess, right when you were going for were nurses saying, get ready, you're about to change your life forever? Like, were there those conversations, like all happy? And
it was a happy, so I still have pictures somewhere around here, but family members, friends, all waiting hours and hours and hours for the lungs to be cleared. It was like, this was the culmination of everything. Like, this is it. So I was happy. My friends were happy. My parents were happy. We're all just like, let's get this over with. And nurses were like, we'll see you on the other side. You see the doctor for maybe a few minutes once they give you like, oh, the lungs look good. This is your fit. And we'll see you when you wake up. So I was like, I wasn't scared. I did have this thought of, well, it could go terribly wrong. But that was, I was overwhelmingly optimistic. However, when I woke up and the tubes were all pulled out, the breathing tube and the ventilators turned off, everybody's excited for me to take my first breath. And it was one of the most uncomfortable and depressing experiences of my life because it was such a painful and inadequate. It was like the mismatch of expectation versus reality. I could not take a deep breath. And not only could I not take a deep breath, it felt leagues worse than anything that I experienced in the 28 years before that. And that was not mentioned at all in the pre-transplant sort of workup. Like this, and it's, when you think about it, looking back, it's like, oh, of course it would be difficult and hard. Your lungs were just put in, you just were beat up. It's been 3 days, you just had the tube removed. Some of us can't breathe after a colonoscopy when they pull the tube out of the throat. But I think it's because of the cystic fibrosis and, I think sometimes our strength and our optimistic and, oh, you're doing so good, sort of, they don't even, it just eludes them or leads them to say that, oh, this will be difficult for a few days or weeks. So that was incredibly difficult to get over. The pain, the sheer pain, the chest tubes, not the surgery itself, but the chest tubes. Couldn't sleep on a bed for 6 months. Had to find these weird lazy boys. Not discussed in the pre-transplant workup. The PFT results, the first few PFT results after my transplant were all the worst PFT results. Even if I was a new transplant patient, they would have referred me back to transplant because of how bad the FEVs were. And it was you're looking at these numbers, and because how important numbers are to both our psyche, but also our treatment of care. You're at 40%, you were at 50% last month. What's going on? So I'm sitting here at 25% 2 months after transplant. And it's what have I done? What have I done? I still can't really ride my bike. Everything hurts. And as a CF patient too, with our weight, I lost so much weight in the hospital, and I hated. It was such a fight to get the stomach tube that I had in high school because of visual concerns, because of intimacy concerns, because of girls like me even interested in somebody that has this tube sticking out of their stomach and gets fed overnight. So part of the allure for transplant for me was, well, I get to get rid of the tube. And it was no, you need to gain 30 pounds. And it's I can't breathe right now. I'm underweight, still in college. And it was this it's not the bill of goods that I was sold. And then also seeing other patients doing well was it was at that point I sort of just had to take a step back. And I removed myself from all sort of social media. I sort of disconnected from all of my CF friends. And I was I just got to focus on it's not an overnight process. But I think because the transplant itself is it's an 8-hour, they put the lungs in you. And it's everybody's so happy. And because the hospital stay was less than a normal CF stay. So I was in the hospital for 10 days. A normal CF stay, remember, 14, 21 days. So you're okay, then what's the problem? You just had a major surgery and you were out. You would still be in the hospital if you were a normal exacerbation. And so it's just putting together all these puzzle pieces of well, I should be here, but I'm not. Why am I not at this place yet? Is it something I'm doing? Is it the size of the lungs? What am I doing wrong? It took about 6 months to get to a point where instead of doing big bike rides and big gestures, it was just do a little bit each day. Just start decentering the whole PFT stuff. Your appointments are fine. And you have to go to the appointments once a week for 3 months. So they're looking at you, there's nothing wrong. There's also the mental block of, and I talked to this with new transplant patients, the mental block of actually blowing into a tube after your transplant, and just the weird mindset of, will I break my lungs? Will I break something? Will I irrevocably destroy something that I worked so hard for? So there was times when my PFTs were artificially low because I was not pushing myself because I was scared. But that's not something that was discussed pre-transplant. This is something that's natural. You will be scared to do a normal PFT. You will be scared to hold on and push out. Your lungs still hurt, and you're also worried it's this weird mind trick. Am I going to blow too hard where I screw something up? And it just wasn't discussed. And it wasn't until I got more comfortable going outside and doing bike rides and being okay, here's a mile, here's 2 miles, I'm feeling good, and just keep adding and just getting back into a routine. And then also getting over the hump of not having to cough. There was periods where I was I'm not coughing. Maybe I should cough. You don't need to cough. But it gets back to, I think, the centers and the education and also the interaction with CF patients themselves. And this is what you should expect versus what they're telling you. You should expect it to be a difficult, painful, it's going to be filled with all sorts of weird issues that may derail you, that are not talked about as much. It may not even be the lungs. It could be the kidneys. It could be some bad blood work, whatever. And how are you going to prepare for that when that happens, when you're in the hospital? It's oh, your lungs are fine, but because of the transplant, something else went awry. It's like, what am I going to do? Those first few months of the PFTs that were consistently low and feeling a bit more dependent than I was pre-transplant, because you're sort of put into this box of what you can and can't do. There's some hard no's, there's lifestyle changes, there's foods you can't eat anymore, things you're not supposed to do socially. So all this stuff's taken away, and then you're not feeling good, and you're more dependent. So I had to move back to my parents' house. I'd been living by myself at this point for like 9 years. So moving back to your parents' house, having them take care of you, family, friends, bringing food over. And it's like, just 3 weeks ago, I was bad, but I was still at my own place, eating pizza at 1 o'clock in the morning, doing whatever. And now this has all changed. And for what? Now I'm at 25%, like I'm at 30%. Are you kidding me? So there's definitely waves and questioning, double, second, triple guessing. Was this worth it? Yeah. But we, again, at the center, there was no help. There was no help. There was no discussion about that. It was like, you got the transplant, take it as it is. I don't think I became truly okay with it until I met my then wife, who was also, we met through, she also had a transplant there, but we met because she got sick and she just needed someone to talk to because we were similar ages. We sort of were trading stories, and that's how we became attached. But even now, like, still have a psychologist, still off and on meds, especially the last few years. And the mental health is, even to this day at transplant appointments, my blood pressure gets to a point where it's so bad and the anxiety gets so bad that I sort of get sequestered into a private room and told to just calm down because I won't be able to do my PFTs because they're too high. They've crossed the threshold where they won't allow me to do my PFTs. This happened as recently as February. I mean, I'm 14 years. And it's still, because if you drop 10%, if they draw your blood and something came back, that could be the beginning of the end. So each appointment is nerve-wracking still, each sore throat,
It's like, is this it?
Yeah, is this
the one?
Is this, and if it is, did I do everything I wanted to do? Did I spend my time appropriately? Did I accomplish what I wanted to when I agreed to do the transplant? Did I do enough? Did I push hard enough? Was I a good patient? Did I make sure to commiserate with my doctors and be like, is this a good treatment? Is this a bad treatment? What will help me? So it's still it's still every single day it's not, is this it? But it's more like, this could be it. So don't do something stupid and don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to invite a problem. But yeah, it's still the mental, it doesn't go away. And I would say Duke in particular are very good because they have a transplant psychologist that works within the team. So they already have a background in transplant and cystic fibrosis. So there's a lot of legwork that you don't have to discuss. Like, what is CF and what is the transplant? It's like, oh, no, this sucks. It sucks. Everybody's happy that you're doing well. There's still I think a lot of transplant patients, myself, hide. Not many people know the extent of what it is to live with a transplant, like post-CF. I hide all my appointments from staff, because if they saw the extent, 35 appointments this year, none of them related to cystic fibrosis, just transplant stuff. If they saw the extent of what it is just to be a healthy transplant patient, I think it would surprise a lot of people. Like, this is what we have to do a year and daily, and the nurse check-ins and are you doing this? I have to send my blood pressure to the nurses. I have to send my weight. I have to take a picture of the scale and send it to the nurses because still have issues with my weight. But none of that stuff it's just, we do such a good job of like, oh, we're doing well. And I am doing well, but it's also like, it's a lot of work. It's nonstop. So the mental aspect it's always like a calculation. Is this worth it? Is this going to help me? At the end of the day, I know I'll be back at Duke in some form or fashion. How do I want to be there? Is it because of something I did that put me here, or is it something just happened? I don't want it to be because of something I did. And I hope when I'm back at that situation that I was able to push as hard on the bike, travel as much as I wanted to. And I have books everywhere. I love to read. So I have hundreds of books upstairs. And by reading, it helps me like transport myself to a different, like, yes, it's tough. It is tough. And reading helped me in the hospital. It helped me during my transplant to be like, we all go through some shit. We all go through some bad stuff. But reading is always there to help me like put it into context of it's okay. It's unique, but it's not that unique. It's helped me a lot, especially with my wife's passing, to put things in perspective and to recognize that we had 11 years together, that none of us thought we would live that long in the first place. For me, 14 years. So reading, and as far as cycling, just finding weird trails and riding without headphones and just enjoying nature. Like, I can ride my bike at 20 miles an hour, and the only thing that bothers me is my legs, not my lungs. So that in itself is like, wow. And it helps me. And just, again, a lot of the stuff post-transplant's not talked about, but the skin cancers and the stuff like that, the colonoscopies, all this other extreme, the kidneys, the amount of focus that goes on the kidneys. So it's finding little ways to just decompress. So for me, it's sitting on the porch and just having a wine in total silence. Or like about once a year, I'll text my coordinator and be like, I don't want to speak to anybody from Duke for like 3 weeks. Like, I don't want no labs. I don't want to see anything. Like, I'm good. Just had a great appointment. No messages. No, get this done, get this done. Like, oh, at the root, just appreciating that somehow 14 years, still here, still at 100%. My liters have gone up. When I was transplanted, I was about 2 liters. Now I'm at 5 liters. So it's still, each year it gets higher and higher and higher, and I attribute it to the bike and just pushing. But yeah, there's still a lot of dark moments though. A lot of, especially when I'm at the hospital and waiting for the results. You can work yourself up the day before. Tough conversations. CF friends have held me accountable. I've gotten really bad with my weight. So even the last year, I've been lying about my weight at the doctor's office, whether we wearing extra coats or knowing that the new technician is clueless with CF and transplant, and knowing that I could just step on the scale with whatever and they don't care. And how uncomfortable it is. For me, I don't know how it is for you, but for me, eating a lot is uncomfortable. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So I don't eat, and I try to get away with just a normal amount without getting sick. But it was a CF friend who noticed, it's like, you don't look totally right. It's like, step on a scale. And then she told him and then I was like, I got busted. But it's just like that, having that accountability within CF friends. But that was this year. So it's like, this is still happening, and it's just tough. It's still hard. Angela was my donor. Her family found me while I was still in the hospital. They knew who received her daughter's lung before I knew who was a donor. So they connected the dots. We still talk yearly. I keep them up on my travel updates. Angela was 18 years old when she passed. She was an amazing person. I went to her sister's wedding a few years ago, and funny, it's weird. I get goosebumps every time because Angela's dad is same name as me, Stephen Mark, and he also has the same birthday. So I don't even know what to say about that. And we've been friends the last 14 years. Whenever I'm in a bad spot or struggling or think I need a little bit more push, I always think of my wife and how hard she pushed in her second transplant every day at Duke and how difficult it was. But I also think of, I have Angela's lungs inside of me, and I'm not going to risk them. She only made it to 18 years old, and she was healthy. I'm not going to ever compromise the gift I was giving, and I'm always going to push as hard as I can to make sure they improve and get stronger. So whenever I'm traveling, I just think of her when I'm just walking 20, 30,000 steps a day. I'm like, this is because of her. And it makes me, even in like the darkest days, just, it wouldn't be possible without her. Yeah, you could take a few bad days, and I do. Like, you could be in the dumps for a few days, but then like, okay, like, I have a gift. and keep pushing until it's not there. So, yeah.